ladies and gentlemen of the internet, it's RJ, and today for the 100 subscriber special we'll be taking a look at this custom painted 24-inch head-to-tail NECA 2014 Godzilla. As a brief overview, this figure was released in the summer of 2014, slightly after the release of Gareth Edwards' Godzilla movie. This followed the release of the 6-inch figure, as well as the Bandai vinyls, which I reviewed, and to be perfectly honest, they were really shitty. This also came out prior to the Monster Arts version, and a lot of us already know how much of a colossal disappointment this was. So this is the main contender for the best iteration of this design, at least in merchandise form. Starting with Articulation, this guy's head is on a ball joint, as is his neck. There's a hinge for the jaw, and it is much nicer than the hinge on the 6-inch figure. Ball joint for the torso. Hinge at the shoulder, although it's very finicky. That's the one thing the smaller figure has over it. We got some swivels, so Godzilla can windmill. Hinges at the shoulders. These would be the elbows, RJ, get your shit together. Ball joint for the wrists. Godzilla is looking at his hand. It's beautiful. I'm crying just thinking about it, and I have to watch it. I feel like there's a swivel for the hips. There goes the tail. Irrelevant. A hinge at the knees. And the ankles are very finicky. Like, I'm straining just to get them to do this. And since the tail decided it would be going on its own bizarre adventure, we'll have to look at it separately. All throughout it are ball joints, unlike the 6-inch figure, which is just a rubber tail with some wire through it. So this definitely has a lot more longevity, and it just poses nicer. Moving on to detail, as you can see, the figure is primarily a very nice sandy brown. In case those of you watching at home, or those of you with no eyes at home, and if you found this channel with no eyes, I commend your efforts. This figure was custom painted, as the factory version is a nice gray color with a blue wash. My buddy Justin painted this, as well as some other minor modifications like the spines and the teeth. And if you want to see some of his other work, I will link his Facebook page in the description. Now moving on to the finer details, as you can see running down his back, he has some very nice spine detailing. He looks like an alligator, but bigger, and not an alligator at all. That was not a good comparison, because alligators are about 6 feet long. He's a couple inches more than 6 feet long, I think. More like a couple 100 meters. Cream-colored belly with this nice armor. We got the triumphant return of the well-defined crotch. Moving the tripod a little bit, here you can see his legs. Some very nice overlapping scales on his thighs as well as his shins. His beautiful tree trunk brontosaurus feet with black nails, and his claws are black as well. Scooting the figure along, here is his very long tail. And as I mentioned earlier, here are the filed down spines. They're much sharper than they are on the retail version, and they're pointy. Wow, I need to go to the hospital now. I think I'm dead. Moving on to accessories, this figure has nothing. However, he does have a neat little feature. If you depress this spine right here on his tail, fucking nothing happens. Normally the figure is supposed to roar. However, the way that NECA implemented this feature is right here, there is a sound chip. When you insert the tail, if you do not heat up this very thoroughly, there is a good chance you will snap the sound card. Why they didn't put it in the body, so there's a lower chance of it being broken, I'm not quite sure. But it's not really that much of a big deal, it's just a roar. And I've heard stories of it going off in the middle of the night, and I don't need that kind of stress in my life. So overall, this is essentially the pinnacle of figures for this design, at least articulated-wise. The smaller figure, while very nice, does not have as sharp details, and obviously isn't as tall as this figure. The Bandai vinyls were incredibly disappointing, as is the Monster Arts version. For this, however, you get a very large figure for about $50 at retail. The factory version of the paint job isn't too shabby, although some people might think the wash is a bit too heavy. And the articulation is excellent for a figure of this price point. So overall, if you were a fan of this design, I would say try to find this figure.